Justin Hale's shoes glided soundlessly across the crystal floor, his mind crowded with error data and the lingering scent of incense that permeated the hallways of the Elysian dawn. As a translator systems engineer from Earth Federation, he had one mission: fix the translation error affecting the new security layer. Simple enough, or so he thought. The diplomatic vessel, Elysian Dawn, was a marvel of galactic engineering, crystalline architecture interwoven with metal, creating corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity. It represented the pinnacle of the Galactic Alliance's achievements, a floating palace where interplanetary diplomacy happened amid luxury and ancient tradition. Justin hadn't slept properly since receiving the urgent assignment. Commander Liaison Meyer had been clear. This isn't just a technical problem, Hale. It's a diplomatic one. The Volari aristocrats are particular about their privacy protocols. Fix it, and don't cause any incidents. He sighed, running a hand through his short brown hair. At 29, Justin had established himself as one of Earth's most capable system engineers. But interspecies diplomacy wasn't in his job description. The maze-like corridors of the Elysian Dawn all looked disturbingly similar. Crystal panels reflecting starlight in patterns that disoriented even seasoned travelers. Just find junction E17, recalibrate the submatrix and get out, he muttered to himself, checking his datapad again. The corridor ahead split into 3 identical paths, each shimmering with the same ethereal blue light. Justin squinted at a faded sign on the wall. The translation matrix was definitely malfunctioning. The Volari script blurred between technical access and something that looked suspiciously like royal quarters. He chose the middle path, trusting his instincts. As he rounded the corner, the ambient lighting shifted subtly. The clinical brightness gave way to a warmer, golden hue. The air grew heavier with the scent of ceremonial incense, sandalwood and something alien, sweet yet earthy. A distant melody floated through the air, string instruments creating a harmonic pattern that felt almost mathematical in its precision. Too absorbed in his thoughts, Justin failed to notice the subtle change in the flooring pattern, from standard-issue crystal tiles to hand-carved royal insignia. He missed the small red warning light above a sliding door, indicating no foreigners beyond this point. The sensors on the older door, recently reconfigured into a ritual chamber, detected his approach and slid open without warning. One step forward, and Justin found himself somewhere he absolutely should not be. The chamber before him was spacious and elegant, draped in translucent silken curtains that created sections of privacy within the open space. Hovering light orbs cast a gentle, diffused glow that caught on the crystalline accents of the room. A ceremonial basin of blue flame flickered in the center, casting dancing shadows across the walls. It took Justin's eyes a moment to adjust, and then he saw her. Behind one of the semi-transparent curtains stood a tall, slender figure. Her skin was a luminous blue that seemed to glow from within, bioluminescent patterns tracing elegant lines across her shoulders and arms. A ceremonial robe hung loosely from one shoulder, exposing the graceful curve of her back as she reached for something just out of view. Justin's heart hammered against his ribs. He had just walked in on Lady Sarani Volari, daughter of the Volari Empress and heir to their ancient lineage, during what appeared to be a private dressing ritual. Her head turned slightly, just enough for him to catch a glimpse of her profile: high cheekbones, a straight, aristocratic nose, and most strikingly, eyes that glowed with the intensity of molten gold. There was no mistaking the royal features of the Volari bloodline. Time seemed to freeze. Justin's throat closed up in panic. Every diplomatic briefing he'd ever received flashed through his mind, none of which covered what to do when accidentally intruding on alien royalty in their private chambers. His survival instinct finally kicked in. He took an awkward step backward, ready to flee, but it was too late. Lady Sarani had fully turned toward him now. There was no embarrassment on her face, no shock, only a curious, evaluating gaze that held him frozen in place. Her golden eyes seemed to pierce through him, assessing everything from his rumpled Earth Federation uniform to his obvious mortification. Then, to his astonishment, she nodded slightly, her expression thoughtful rather than outraged. "You enter. You see. You do not flee." Her voice was melodic, with an otherworldly resonance that made each word seem to linger in the air. "In my ritual. This is a mating invitation." Justin's face drained of color. The words echoed in his mind, incomprehensible yet terrifyingly clear. He backed away, stumbling over his own feet, and nearly ran down the corridor. His heart pounded against his chest as he pressed his cheek against the cool crystal wall around the corner, trying to catch his breath. What had he just done? What had she meant? Surely there was a misunderstanding, some horrible translation error. His datapad chirped with an urgent message, the screen flashing red. 2 messages appeared simultaneously. From Myron, Royal Advisor. "Report to the observation hall immediately." From Commander Liaison. "What have you done, Hale?" The whispering had already begun in the corridors. "An Earth engineer entered the Valari royal chamber during the sacred ritual. What path will he choose?" Justin closed his eyes briefly, trying to compose himself. Whatever had just happened, it was clear that his simple repair mission had just become infinitely more complicated. The observation hall was intimidatingly large, its ceiling a perfect recreation of the starfield surrounding the Elysian dawn. Justin had never been in this section of the ship before. Under different circumstances, he might have appreciated the architectural marvel, how the crystal panels created the illusion that one was standing in open space, protected only by an invisible force field. Myron was waiting for him, tall and imposing in formal diplomatic attire. The royal advisor's expression was unreadable, hands clasped behind their back. "Engineer Hale," Myron acknowledged without preamble. "Do you understand what has transpired?" Justin swallowed hard. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I was trying to access Junction E17 to repair the translation system. I must have taken a wrong turn." "The junction was relocated 3 cycles ago," Myron interrupted. "The corridor now leads to Lady Sarani's ritual chambers." The advisor's gaze sharpened. "But that is not the issue at hand. You entered her chambers during the preparation of selection, and you observed her." Justin ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Look, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. I'll apologize formally if that's what's needed. But apologize." Myron's expression shifted slightly, revealing something that might have been amusement. "You misunderstand. Engineer. In Valari tradition, what occurred has initiated the ritual of spontaneous bonding." "The what?" "When a Valari royal is observed in the state of unveiling without concealing their face, it constitutes a formal mating invitation. By remaining in her presence, even briefly, you have accepted the first stage of courtship." Justin's jaw dropped. That can't be right. I didn't know. We're not even the same species." "Interspecies bonds are rare, but not without precedent," Myron said with a shrug. "According to tradition, you are now her protective consort, or her challenger." "Her what?" "The ritual dates back thousands of years. It was designed to ensure that any who glimpsed a royal in vulnerability would be bound by honor to either protect them or face them in ritual combat." Justin felt lightheaded. "This is insane. I'm just here to fix a translation error. And now you are bound by one of our most sacred traditions." Myron's expression softened slightly. "I understand your confusion, but this is a matter of significant political importance. Lady Sarani's selection ceremony is in 3 days. She was preparing for her formal presentation to potential mates from noble houses across the quadrant. "What does this mean for the diplomatic relations between Earth and Valari?" Justin asked, his mind racing through potential diplomatic fallout scenarios. "That depends entirely on how you proceed," Myron said. "If you reject the ritual now, it would be considered a grave insult to House Valari. The Earth-Valari treaty negotiations could suffer significantly." Justin closed his eyes, trying to process the situation. "And if I don't reject it?" "Then, you must complete the trial of dissonance. 3 challenges to prove your sincerity. If you succeed, you become Lady Serrani's recognized consort, with all the political implications that entails. And if I fail?" Myron's expression darkened. "Let us hope it doesn't come to that." Justin spent the night in his quarters, unable to sleep. The enormity of what had happened kept his mind racing in circles. He'd gone from being a systems engineer to a political pawn in less than a day. Commander Liaison had been furious when briefed about the situation, but even she had to admit there was no simple way out. Earth needed this alliance with the Valari. Morning found Justin standing outside Lady Serrani's chambers, dressed in formal Earth attire, the closest thing to ceremonial wear he owned. His hand trembled slightly as he pressed the announcement chime. The door slid open silently. Lady Serrani stood tall and regal, dressed in full royal regalia that highlighted her slender form. In proper lighting, her blue skin was even more striking, the bioluminescent patterns more intricate than he had initially realized. They pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made visible. "You have returned," she observed, her golden eyes studying him with that same curious intensity he remembered from their first encounter. "I did not forbid it. Sit." Justin carefully lowered himself onto a cushion across from her, trying to mirror her straight-backed posture. "I want to understand what's happening," he said, struggling to keep his voice even. Serrani tilted her head slightly. "Is it not clear? You witnessed the unveiling. By our tradition, this initiates the mating invitation, a 1,000-year-old practice. Those who see a Valari noble uncovered, without averting their eyes, are granted the privilege of courtship." "But it was an accident," Justin protested. "I didn't know about your tradition." "Intention is irrelevant to the ritual," she replied calmly. "Only action matters. You saw. You remained. The bond was initiated." Justin tried a different approach. "Why aren't you upset about this? Wasn't this ritual supposed to be with someone, well, someone from your own kind? A nobleman, perhaps?" A flicker of something, amusement, frustration, passed across Serrani's features. "The selection ceremony would have presented me with candidates from various noble houses, all politically advantageous, all predictable." She leaned forward slightly. "Your arrival introduces dissonance. This is not unwelcome." Justin blinked in surprise. "You're not angry that I interrupted your preparations?" "Anger is inefficient," she said simply. "And the ritual is not interrupted. It is merely altered. Now, we begin the trial of dissonance." "The what?" "3 challenges to verify sincerity," she explained. "First, you will attend the Noble Council at my side. Second, you will face the combat simulation. Third, you will undergo the spiritual questioning. All must be completed before the 3rd rising of the central star." Justin felt completely out of his depth. "And if I complete these challenges?" "Then you become my recognized consort, and our bond is acknowledged by all houses." Her golden eyes held his gaze steadily. "Do you accept the trial?" Every logical part of Justin's brain was screaming that this was madness. He was an engineer, not a diplomat or warrior. Yet refusing would damage Earth-Valari relations, possibly for generations. "I accept," he said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. Serrani nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Then we begin." The Noble Council was held in a vast chamber, dominated by a circular table made of some iridescent material that seemed to capture and refract the light from the starfield visible through the ceiling. Dozens of Valari nobles sat in ornate chairs, their skin showing various shades of blue and teal, all marked with unique bioluminescent patterns that Justin now understood were familial identifiers. As Justin entered alongside Sarani, a hush fell over the assembly. He could feel their eyes on him, some curious, others openly hostile. He was acutely aware of his alien appearance among them, his pinkish skin, his rounded ears, his lack of bioluminescence, an outsider in every way possible. Sarani guided him to a seat at her right hand, a position of honor that caused a ripple of murmurs throughout the chamber. An older Valari with elaborate markings spoke first. "Lady Sarani, you bring an outsider to our council. Explain yourself." Sarani's posture remained perfect, her voice clear and commanding. "Honorable Council, I present Justin Hale of Earth. He has initiated the ritual of spontaneous bonding and has accepted the trial of dissonance." More murmurs, louder this time. Another noble, wearing the insignia of House Drenth, stood. "This is unprecedented. A human? In a sacred Valari ritual? The bloodlines must remain pure. The ritual predates your concern for bloodlines." "Lord Zaral," Sarani replied coolly, "the ancient texts speak only of one who sees with honor. They do not specify species." Justin remained silent, following Myron's earlier advice to speak only when directly addressed. The political undercurrents were obvious even to him. This was as much about challenging Sarani's authority as it was about his presence. "And what skills does this human bring to House Valari?" another noble asked, with thinly veiled contempt. "What qualities make him worthy of consideration where our sons are not?" Before Sarani could answer, Justin found himself addressed directly. All eyes turned to him, waiting. He took a deep breath. "I am a systems engineer specializing in translation matrices. My work helps facilitate communication between different species and cultures." He paused, then added, "I believe understanding is the foundation of peace." There was a moment of silence, then scattered laughter. "A technician," Zaral said dismissively. "Not even a warrior or diplomat." Sarani's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. "Yet he stands here, facing your scorn without flinching. That requires its own kind of courage." Her bioluminescent patterns brightened subtly. "And in times of change, perhaps understanding is precisely what we need." The council meeting continued for hours, with Justin becoming the focal point of various political arguments. He realized that he was being used as a proxy in long-standing feuds between noble houses. Sarani defended him consistently, her arguments revealing a sharp political mind behind her ceremonial facade. By the time they left, Justin's head was spinning with names, alliances, and veiled threats. One thing was clear. By accepting this ritual, he had stepped into a political minefield. "You did well," Sarani said as they walked back toward her chambers. "Most outsiders would have broken protocol or shown weakness." "I mostly just tried not to speak unless necessary," Justin admitted. A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Sometimes wisdom lies in silence." She stopped at an intersection of corridors. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow's challenge will test your physical limits." Justin returned to his quarters exhausted, but unable to sleep. He spent hours researching Valari combat techniques on his datapad, knowing it would make little difference. He was an engineer, not a fighter, and tomorrow would likely prove that beyond all doubt. The combat simulation chamber was unlike anything Justin had ever seen. What appeared to be a simple room from the outside transformed once they entered. The walls, floor, and ceiling disappeared, replaced by a dense, misty forest. The gravity shifted, becoming nearly twice Earth normal, making each step an effort. Sarani stood across from him, dressed in simple training attire, her expression serious. "The courage trial is not about victory," she explained, handing him a wooden staff. "It is about resilience. You must stand and face what comes." No sooner had she spoken than the simulation began in earnest. The mist thickened in places, creating ghostly opponents that moved with uncanny speed. The temperature fluctuated wildly, from uncomfortably hot to bone-chillingly cold. And through it all, Sarani became his opponent, her staff a blur of motion as she tested his defenses. Justin had basic self-defense training, mandatory for all Earth personnel in space. But it was woefully inadequate against Sarani's expertise. Each blow that landed sent pain shooting through his body. The increased gravity made his movement sluggish, his reactions too slow. After being knocked down for the 5th time, Justin lay on his back, gasping for breath, every muscle screaming in protest. Sarani stood over him, her golden eyes unreadable. "Do you yield?" she asked. The smart thing would be to say yes, to end this farce. He was not a warrior, had never claimed to be, yet something in him rebelled against the idea of giving up. With trembling arms, Justin pushed himself back to his feet. His body ached, and he could taste blood where he'd bitten his lip. But he raised his staff once more. "No," he said simply. "I don't yield." Something flickered in Sarani's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. She nodded once and resumed her attack, but Justin noticed that her blows, while still painful, were now calibrated to test rather than overwhelm. For what felt like hours, they continued. Justin fell, rose, fell again. Each time, he stood back up, his determination growing rather than waning. He began to anticipate some of Sarani's moves, occasionally managing to block or evade, rather than simply endure. When the simulation finally ended, the forest faded away, leaving them in the plain chamber once more. Justin stood swaying on his feet, his clothing soaked with sweat, his body a catalogue of developing bruises. Sarani approached him, her own breathing only slightly quickened. "Most nobles who face this trial come with combat training and genetic enhancements," she said quietly. "You had neither, yet you never stayed down." Justin managed a weak smile. "Engineers are stubborn. We don't like unsolved problems." "Indeed." She reached out, her fingers lightly touching a bruise forming on his arm. Her touch was cool, soothing. "Rest. The final trial comes tomorrow." The spiritual questioning took place on an observation deck, with the vast expanse of stars visible above them. A small blue flame burned in a ceremonial bowl between them as they sat cross-legged on cushions, facing each other. Unlike the physical demands of the previous day, this challenge required no movement. Instead, it probed something deeper. "The questioning seeks truth," Sarani explained, her voice soft in the quiet chamber. "Not factual truth, but personal truth. I will ask, and you will answer. The flame will respond to honesty." Justin eyed the blue flame with apprehension. "Is it some kind of lie detector?" "It is more subtle than that. It responds not to lies, but to self-deception." She held his gaze. "What did you feel when you first saw me in the ritual chamber?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "Fear," he answered honestly. "Confusion. And—" he hesitated, then continued. "Awe. Your bioluminescence. I'd never seen anything like it." The blue flame flickered higher, its light reflecting in Sarani's golden eyes. "Why did you accept the trial of dissonance?" she asked. This question was harder. "At first, because I was told refusing would damage relations between our peoples," he admitted. "I felt responsible for the mistake I'd made." "And now?" Justin considered the question carefully. "Now, I'm curious. About your culture, your traditions, about you." He met her gaze steadily. "And I don't like leaving things unfinished." The flame burned steadily, its blue light casting soft shadows across their faces. "What do you fear most?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Justin thought about deflecting with a simple answer, but something in her expression told him that this question mattered more than the others. "Failing when it matters," he said finally. "Making a mistake that hurts others. Being inadequate when someone needs me to be strong." The flame surged upward, nearly doubling in height. Sarani's expression softened. "Many who sit before this flame speak of fears of death or pain. Few speak of the fear of failing others." She leaned forward slightly. "What does honor mean to you, Justin Hale?" "Doing what's right, even when it's difficult," he replied without hesitation. "Keeping your word, standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And truth. Truth is—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Truth is telling what is, not what others want to hear, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts." For hours they continued, question after question peeling away layers of formality until Justin felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with physical nakedness. Sarani asked about his childhood, his beliefs, his hopes and disappointments. And through it all, the blue flame burned steady and bright. Finally, Sarani closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the formality had returned to her posture. "The questioning is complete." "Did I pass?" Justin asked, suddenly aware of how much he wanted her approval. "The flame does not judge pass or fail. It merely reveals." She stood gracefully, extending a hand to help him up. "But yes, your answers showed sincerity. Many candidates lack that quality." As they walked toward the exit, Sarani suddenly changed direction, leading him toward a different section of the ship. "There is something you must see," she said, her tone shifting from ceremonial to urgent. They arrived at the command deck, an area Justin had never expected to access. Officers nodded respectfully to Sarani as she guided him to a private monitoring station. "A secret channel brought this to my attention," she said, activating a holographic display. "An assassination plot against me?" Justin studied the data stream, his engineering expertise allowing him to recognize the pattern. "This is coming from a hidden node, encrypted with—" "Is that a Drenth clan cipher?" "Yes, House Drenth, our main political rivals." Her golden eyes met his. "If we continue with the ritual without addressing this threat, they will likely succeed." The political pressure was mounting. Justin could feel himself being pulled deeper into a world of intrigue he barely understood. Yet, looking at Sarani, seeing the subtle tension in her shoulders and the determination in her eyes, he made his decision. "I'll stay," he said firmly. "I'll help you." Her bioluminescent patterns brightened briefly, a sign of emotion she couldn't fully suppress. "Then we must prepare for the rite of Vexier's witness." The rite of Vexier's witness, a truth tribunal before the Noble Council, was Sarani's bold move. She called the assembly on short notice, creating a formal setting where Justin would present evidence as an outside lineage witness, a rarely used legal position in Volari tradition. Justin stood before the assembled nobles, a truth band encircling his wrist. The device would dim if he spoke anything but absolute truth, a technological enforcement of honesty that made his palms sweat. "I have traced the signal packet," he explained, displaying the decryption sequence he had worked through overnight. "The evidence clearly implicates House Drenth in the assassination plot against Lady Sarani." The council erupted in angry denials and accusations. Zoril Drenth rose to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "Baseless allegations. This human knows nothing of our ways." "The truth band remains lit," Sarani pointed out calmly, "and the evidence speaks for itself." After hours of testimony and technological demonstrations, the council reached its verdict. Zoril Drenth would be genetically branched, removed from the line of succession, and stripped of his political authority. It was a severe punishment that sent shockwaves through the political establishment. Sarani had maintained her position, and Justin had officially become her recognized protective consort. But they both knew this was just the beginning of their troubles. Later, in the privacy of her chambers, Sarani revealed the full extent of their predicament. Zoril's removal is a significant political blow to House Drenth, but they will not accept it quietly. Our intelligence suggests they have hidden vessels waiting to strike. Justin frowned, considering the implications. They'll wait for a moment when you're vulnerable. Probably during the all-house convocation. Yes, the one gathering where all houses must attend, unarmed. Her expression was grim. We must draw them out before then. Together, they crafted a daring plan. They would publicly announce their withdrawal to a diplomatic vessel under the pretense of seeking sanctuary. Justin would send out a distress signal suggesting imminent danger, hoping to lure one of the Drenth vessels out of cloaking. When the Drenth ship revealed itself, the Elysian Dawn and its escort fleet would launch a counterattack, providing definitive proof of the Drenth conspiracy. The plan was risky, but it was their best option. As they finalized the details, Justin realized how quickly he had adapted to this new reality. A week ago, he had been a systems engineer with a straightforward job. Now he was planning countermeasures against assassins and navigating alien politics. "Are you certain you wish to continue?" Sarani asked, studying his face in the dim light of her quarters. "You could request reassignment, return to Earth, and leave you to face this alone." Justin shook his head. "Not a chance." The faintest smile touched her lips. "You continue to surprise me, Justin Hale." The trap was set. Information about their escape was strategically leaked, creating a perfect opportunity for the Drenth faction to strike. Justin modified the ship's alert systems, simulating thermal flares that would force any cloaked vessel to temporarily disengage its cloaking technology or risk detection. When the first Drenth ship appeared, Sarani commanded the defensive systems, while Justin worked to intercept and expose their internal communications to the public database. The battle was brief, but intense. Targeted weapons fire disabled the Drenth vessel without destroying it, preserving the evidence inside. But as they celebrated this small victory, Justin's modified sensors detected something alarming. 2 more ships lurking just outside sensor range, still cloaked. "It's a decoy," he realized aloud. "The first ship was just bait. They're waiting for us to lower our guard." Sarani's expression hardened. "Then we must be more direct. The all-house convocation approaches. We will make our stand there." The all-house convocation was held at the Pillar of Accord, a neutral station described to Justin as a political temple in space. All noble houses were required to attend, and all came unarmed, at least officially. Justin and Sarani had spent days preparing, gathering evidence and planning their approach. They knew that somewhere among the hundreds of delegates were 2 Drenth nobles, disguised as translators or merchants, waiting for their chance to eliminate Sarani. As Justin stood beside Sarani in the Grand Assembly Hall, he couldn't help but marvel at how far he had come. The nobles who had once looked at him with contempt now acknowledged him with grudging nods. The truth band on his wrist, now a symbol of his position rather than a test, gleamed in the light of 1,000 crystal fixtures. When Sarani stepped forward to address the assembly, a hush fell over the crowd. Her bioluminescence was at its most brilliant, her royal regalia emphasizing her status and lineage. "Noble houses of the Volari Confederation," she began, her voice carrying easily in the perfect acoustics of the hall. "We gather in peace, as tradition demands. Yet peace has been threatened by conspiracy and attempted assassination." She gestured to Justin, inviting him forward. This was the moment they had prepared for, the final revelation of the Drenth plot. As Justin began presenting the evidence, recordings from the destroyed Drenth vessel, revealing the broader conspiracy. He noticed a subtle movement near the back of the hall. Two figures were slowly making their way toward the exits. "The final evidence," Justin announced, his voice steady despite his pounding heart, "is the communication log showing the involvement of two additional Drenth agents, Makut and Turvin Drenth, who are present in this assembly right now." The hall erupted in chaos as security personnel moved to intercept the fleeing figures. In the confusion, Justin saw one of them draw a concealed weapon, aiming it directly at Sarani. Without thinking, Justin threw himself forward, knocking Sarani aside as the weapon discharged. A searing pain tore through his shoulder, but he remained conscious, watching as the Drenth agents were subdued and disarmed. When order was finally restored, the evidence was irrefutable. The two Drenth nobles were stripped of rank and escorted from the assembly in disgrace. House Drenth's influence crumbled as other houses distanced themselves from the scandal. Sarani was officially recognized as the legitimate supreme heir, her position secured, and Justin, wounded but standing proud at her side, was acknowledged as her consort, the first human to hold such a position in Valari history. In the days that followed, as Justin recovered from his injury, Sarani visited him privately in the medical bay. She carried a small, ceremonial box. "Among my people," she explained, opening the box to reveal an intricately patterned wristband. "This is the symbol of a lifelong bond." Justin looked from the wristband to her face, searching for any sign of obligation or political calculation. He found none, only a warmth in her golden eyes that he had come to recognize over their time together. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I'm still just an engineer from Earth." "You are far more than that," Sarani replied, taking the band from its box. "You are the one who saw me truly and stood by my side against all odds. In any culture, that is rare and valuable." She placed the band around his wrist, her cool fingers lingering against his skin. "This is not duty or tradition speaking. This is my choice." Justin covered her hand with his own. "Then I accept, gladly." Later, they walked together along the observation deck, stars streaming past the vast windows. The Elysian Dawn was preparing to depart for its next diplomatic mission, with both of them on board, Sarani as the Valari representative, Justin as her official consort and technical advisor. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Justin asked, as they stood watching the stars. "When I accidentally walked into your chamber?" Sarani's bioluminescence brightened subtly, a reaction he now knew indicated amusement or affection. "The accident that changed everything." "I was terrified," he admitted with a smile. "And yet you stayed." She turned to face him, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight. "That is what matters, in the end. Not how we begin, but how we choose to continue." As the Elysian Dawn prepared for its jump to subspace, Justin reflected on how a single wrong turn had led him here, to a new life, a new purpose, and a bond that transcended the boundaries of worlds and cultures. Sometimes, he thought, the greatest journeys begin with a mistake. The ship's engines hummed, the stars blurred, and together they moved forward into whatever the future might hold. Justin had expected his duties as Sarani's consort to be largely ceremonial. He couldn't have been more wrong. As the Elysian Dawn continued its diplomatic journey, he found himself thrust into the complex world of interstellar politics, balancing his engineering expertise with his new role in Valari nobility. The transition wasn't always smooth. During a formal dinner with representatives from the Arctarian Collective, Justin accidentally used the wrong utensil for the ceremonial first course. The resulting silence was deafening until Sarani smoothly commented that Earth customs prioritized efficiency over tradition, transforming his error into a cultural exchange moment. "You're learning," she told him later in their shared quarters, her bioluminescence pulsing with gentle amusement. "Most humans would have apologized profusely. You maintain dignity." I froze, Justin admitted, with a self-deprecating smile. Completely panicked inside, yet outwardly calm. She touched his cheek lightly. That is the essence of diplomacy. These quiet moments together were becoming increasingly precious as their official duties expanded. Justin had taken on the role of technological liaison between Earth Federation and the Volari Confederation, leveraging his engineering background to bridge the gap between the two civilizations' approaches to technology. Sarani, meanwhile, had grown into her role as heir with new confidence. The Drenth conspiracy had inadvertently strengthened her position, proving her capability in crisis. The other noble houses now treated her with increased respect, even those who had initially opposed her unusual consort. 3 months after the events at the All-House Convocation, they received a transmission from the Volari homeworld. The Empress herself requested their return for a formal ceremony to officially recognize their bond in the ancestral temple. "This is significant," Sarani explained, her expression unusually solemn. "My mother has not left the homeworld in 17 years. For her to acknowledge our bond publicly." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The journey to the Volari homeworld gave Justin time to prepare, both mentally and culturally. He spent hours studying Volari ceremonial protocols, determined not to embarrass Sarani before her family and subjects. The planet itself was breathtaking. From orbit, vast oceans of deep purple dominated the landscape, broken by archipelagos of emerald islands and 2 major continents. The capital city was built into the side of a mountain range, its crystal spires reaching toward the sky like frozen waterfalls, catching the light of the binary suns. Their shuttle was met with formal ceremony, rows of Volari guards with ceremonial light spears, forming an honor corridor. Justin felt hundreds of golden eyes watching him, evaluating the human who had claimed a place beside their future empress. The empress awaited them in the grand reception hall, seated upon a throne that seemed to be carved from a single, massive crystal. Her skin was a deeper blue than Sarani's, her bioluminescent patterns more elaborate, telling the story of her lineage and accomplishments. Her eyes held the wisdom of centuries. Volari royalty lived far longer than humans, a fact that Justin tried not to dwell on too often. "Daughter," the Empress acknowledged as Sarani performed the formal greeting. Her gaze shifted to Justin. "And consort." Justin executed the bow he had practiced countless times, maintaining the precise angle that indicated respect without subservience. "Your Majesty," he said in carefully practiced Volari, the difficult phonetics having taken weeks to master. A flicker of surprise crossed the Empress's face before her composed expression returned. "You speak our tongue?" "Imperfectly," Justin replied, "but I continue to learn." The Empress studied him for a long moment before turning back to Sarani. "You have chosen an unusual path, daughter. Yet perhaps it is the path our people need in changing times." The ceremony that followed was elaborate and beautiful, incorporating traditions that dated back thousands of years. Justin and Sarani stood together before the ancestral crystal, their hands bound with a luminous thread that responded to their biorhythms, pulsing in harmony when their hearts beat in synchrony. As the ceremonial words were spoken in ancient Volari, Justin found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. From a simple engineering assignment to standing before the Volari Empress, binding his life to Sarani's. When the thread between them glowed with sustained light, signifying the official recognition of their bond, a cheer rose from the assembled nobles. Not universal. Justin noted several faces that remained stony with disapproval, but enough to suggest that acceptance was possible, even in this most traditional of societies. Later, at the celebration that followed, Justin found a moment of quiet with Sarani on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The twin moons cast a silvery glow over the crystal architecture, creating an almost magical landscape. "Do you regret it?" Sarani asked quietly. The wrong turn that brought you to my chamber? Justin considered the question seriously. How could I? It led me to you. He took her hand, feeling the cool smoothness of her skin against his. Though I still think your mating rituals could use better signage. Her laughter, rare and precious, echoed in the night air. Perhaps we should propose reforms for the next generation. A diplomatic initiative I could fully support, he agreed with a smile. Their moment of peace was interrupted by the arrival of Myron, whose expression immediately put them on alert. Forgive the intrusion, the advisor said with a formal bow. But we have received disturbing intelligence. It appears that elements of House Drenth have formed an alliance with the Krell separatists. Justin tensed. The Krell were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless mercenaries with advanced weapons technology. An alliance with disgraced Drenth nobles created a dangerous combination. What are they planning? Sarani asked, immediately shifting from celebratory spouse to strategic leader. We believe they intend to disrupt the Galactic Summit next month, Myron replied. A direct attack on multiple diplomatic vessels, including the Elysian Dawn. Justin's mind was already racing through security protocols and potential vulnerabilities. We need to alert the Earth delegation immediately and revamp the shield harmonics on all diplomatic vessels. Sarani nodded in agreement. Prepare a secure channel to the Galactic Alliance Council. We must warn them without causing panic. As they moved back inside to begin their response, Justin realized that this was their life now. Moments of personal connection constantly interwoven with the responsibilities of their positions. The path ahead would never be easy, but they would walk it together. The following weeks were a blur of activity as they prepared for the Galactic Summit, while simultaneously working to counter the Drenth Krell threat. Justin coordinated with Earth security forces, upgrading defensive systems on all Federation vessels and implementing new encryption protocols for communications. Sarani, meanwhile, navigated the treacherous waters of interspecies diplomacy, building a coalition of support against the rogue elements threatening the summit. Her skill in politics impressed Justin daily. She maneuvered through competing interests and ancient grudges with the precision of a master strategist. When the summit finally arrived, the tension was palpable. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations gathered on the massive space station, Harmony Point, its neutral territory considered sacred by all members of the Galactic Alliance. Security was unprecedented. Every delegate and ship was scanned multiple times, and a fleet of defensive vessels maintained a protective perimeter around the station. Justin had personally overseen the implementation of a new detection grid designed to identify cloaked ships, a direct response to the Drenth tactics they had encountered before. The opening ceremony proceeded without incident, but Justin remained vigilant. The intelligence reports suggested the attack would come during the second day of negotiations, when the trade agreements were scheduled for ratification. He and Sarani maintained their formal roles during public sessions. But in private, they were constantly reviewing security feeds and intelligence updates. Their quarters had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Holographic displays showing ship movements and security checkpoints throughout the station. Something doesn't feel right, Justin said late into the night before the second day of the summit. The security is too tight for a direct assault. They must have another angle we're not seeing. Sarani looked up from the diplomatic briefing she was reviewing. What are you thinking? If I were them, I'd use a Trojan horse approach. Something already inside our defenses. He frowned, scanning through the security logs again. We've been focusing on ships and weapons. But what about... His eyes widened as a possibility occurred to him. The translation system. It connects everything. Communications, navigation, even life support coordination. If someone introduced a virus into the master translation matrix, they could cause chaos without firing a shot, Sarani finished, immediately grasping the implication. Justin was already pulling up the system architecture on his datapad. This is what I was originally sent to fix on the Elysian Dawn, a vulnerability in the translation matrix. What if that wasn't a random glitch? What if it was a test run? They worked through the night, Justin diving deep into the coding architecture, while Sarani used her authority to gain access to secure sections of the network without raising alarms. By morning, they had their answer, and it was worse than they had feared. "It's already in the system," Justin confirmed grimly. Set to trigger during the trade agreement session, it would have locked all the emergency bulkheads, disabled communications, and vented atmosphere in selected sections, including the main chamber where all the delegates will be gathered, Sarani added, her bioluminescence dimmed with concern. They took their evidence directly to the Summit Security Council, a joint body composed of representatives from each major power. As Justin explained the technical aspects of the threat, Sarani handled the political implications, carefully avoiding direct accusations until the evidence was incontrovertible. When the coding signatures were traced back to a terminal used by the Drenth delegation, the response was swift and decisive. The conspirators were arrested, the malicious code purged from the system, and additional security measures implemented throughout the station. The summit continued without further incident, but the foiled plot had lasting consequences. The Drenth-Krell alliance was exposed and condemned by all member worlds. House Drenth, already weakened by the previous scandal, lost its seat on the Volari High Council, a political blow from which it would likely never recover. For Justin and Sarani, the crisis had forged their partnership even stronger. Their complementary skills, his technical expertise and her political acumen, had saved countless lives and preserved the fragile peace between worlds. As the summit concluded successfully, they found themselves on an observation deck, watching as the diplomatic vessels prepared for departure. The Elysian Dawn waited for them, its crystalline structure gleaming against the backdrop of stars. "We make a good team," Justin said, taking Sarani's hand in his. "Yes," she agreed, her golden eyes warm as she looked at him. "Though not the team anyone would have predicted. The best partnerships rarely are," he replied with a smile. "So, where do we go from here?" Sarani's bioluminescence brightened, patterns shifting in a way he had come to recognize as excitement. "The outer reaches have requested diplomatic representation. There are developing civilizations seeking alliance membership." "Sounds challenging," Justin observed. "Exactly what we need." They boarded the Elysian Dawn together, no longer an engineer who took a wrong turn, and a princess preparing for a traditional mating ritual, but partners in every sense: diplomatic, strategic, and personal. Their story had begun with an accidental intrusion, but it would continue as a deliberately chosen journey together. As the ship prepared for departure, Justin reflected on how quickly life could change course. One moment of mistaken navigation had led him to Sarani, to a whole new life he could never have imagined. Sometimes, the wrong turn led exactly where you needed to go. The Elysian Dawn slipped into subspace, carrying them toward new challenges and adventures. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it as they had faced everything else, together, bridging the differences between their worlds and finding strength in their bond. In the observation lounge of the Elysian Dawn, Justin stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the hypnotic swirl of subspace through the reinforced viewport. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Summit, and their lives had settled into a rhythm that somehow balanced diplomatic missions with their personal relationship. "Engineering reports the translation matrix is functioning at optimal levels," he said as Sarani entered the lounge. "We should reach the Callisto outpost by tomorrow." Sarani moved to stand beside him, her ceremonial robes exchanged for the more practical attire she preferred during transit. "The Mercurian delegation has requested a private audience before the main negotiations begin." Justin nodded, familiar with the political maneuvering that preceded every diplomatic engagement. "They're worried about the new tariff structure." "With good reason." Sarani's reflection in the viewport showed her thoughtful expression. Their economy relies heavily on mineral exports that would be affected by the proposed changes. This was their life now, a continuous flow of diplomatic missions, negotiations, and occasional crises that required both her political savvy and his technical expertise. After the events at the Galactic Summit, they had become something of a legend in diplomatic circles. The human engineer and the Volari princess, who had foiled an interstellar conspiracy. The stories grew more elaborate with each retelling. In some versions, Justin had single-handedly fought off a dozen assassins. In others, Serrani had used ancient Volari magic to detect the hidden code. The truth, hours of painstaking system analysis and careful political maneuvering, was less dramatic, but no less impressive in its own way. Commander Velra sent the security briefing for Callisto, Justin said, changing the subject. Apparently, there's been increased activity from splinter groups opposed to Alliance expansion. Serrani's bioluminescence dimmed slightly, a sign of concern. The fragmentation of the anti-alliance movement makes them more difficult to track. But less organized in their opposition, Justin pointed out. Velra doesn't anticipate any serious threats, just the usual protesters. They had faced worse. In the months since the summit, remnants of the Drenth-Krell alliance had made several attempts to undermine their diplomatic efforts. Each attempt had failed, but the constant vigilance was wearing. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the subspace patterns. This was one of the things Justin had come to appreciate most about their relationship. They could be silent together without awkwardness, each lost in their own thoughts, yet somehow still connected. "I received a message from my mother today," Serrani said eventually. "She has approved our request to establish the Cultural Exchange Initiative." Justin turned to her with genuine excitement. "That's excellent news. When can we begin implementation?" The Cultural Exchange Initiative had been their joint project for months, a program designed to foster deeper understanding between Earth and Volari, beyond the formal diplomatic channels. It would include educational exchanges, artistic collaborations, and technological partnerships. "The first exchange groups can begin training next cycle," Serrani replied, her own enthusiasm evident in the brightening patterns across her skin. "Your former colleague, Dr. Naomi Chen, has agreed to lead the Earth contingent." "Naomi is perfect for this," Justin agreed. "She has the technical background to understand our systems, but also the cultural sensitivity to navigate Volari customs." He had worked with Dr. Chen on several projects before his assignment to the Elysian Dawn changed his life's trajectory. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication. Myron's face appeared on the nearest display panel. "Lady Serrani, Engineer Hale," the advisor acknowledged formally. "We have received a coded transmission from one of our intelligence sources near the Krell border. It appears the Separatists are regrouping under new leadership." Justin moved closer to the screen, studying the data that accompanied the message. These energy signatures, they're consistent with prototype phase shift weapons, technology that shouldn't exist outside of theoretical research. Serrani's expression hardened into the focused determination that Justin had come to recognize as her royal heir demeanor. "Forward all data to the secure command center. We'll meet you there in 10 minutes. As the display went dark, Justin turned to Serrani with a raised eyebrow. "So much for a routine diplomatic mission to Callisto." "Did you expect anything less?" she asked, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth, despite the seriousness of the situation. He shook his head, already mentally shifting gears from diplomat to strategist. "Not really. Honestly. I'd be worried if we went a full month without some kind of interstellar crisis." As they walked briskly toward the command center, their shoulders occasionally brushing, Justin reflected on how completely his life had transformed. He had once been consumed with translation algorithms and system upgrades. Now, he helped shape the political landscape of multiple worlds. Yet, for all the changes, for all the dangers and responsibilities, he wouldn't trade this life for anything. He glanced at Sarani beside him, regal, brilliant, and stronger than anyone he had ever known, and felt the familiar surge of gratitude for that one wrong turn that had led him to her chamber. Whatever this new threat might bring, they would face it as they had faced everything else, together, combining the best of their worlds to forge a path forward. The command center was already a hive of activity when they arrived. Tactical displays showed the border region near Krell space, with suspicious energy readings highlighted in pulsing red. Our intelligence suggests they're testing the weapons on an uninhabited moon in the Verdant system, Myron reported, bringing up detailed scans. If these readings are accurate, the destructive capacity is concerning. Justin studied the data, his engineering background allowing him to grasp the implications immediately. These weapons could penetrate standard Alliance shields. If they deploy this technology against diplomatic vessels or outposts, it would destabilize the entire sector, Sarani finished, her golden eyes narrowed in thought. We need more information before we bring this to the Alliance Council. Commander Velra, who had risen from security officer to Sarani's trusted military advisor, spoke up. I recommend a covert reconnaissance mission, a small team, minimal profile, gather intelligence and return. Too risky to send a standard team. Justin objected. If these readings are accurate, they'll have detection systems that would spot Alliance signatures immediately. A moment of silence fell over the command center as the implications became clear. Sarani met Justin's gaze, a wordless communication passing between them. We'll go, she said finally. A diplomatic vessel on a routine course adjustment wouldn't raise suspicions, especially with the background radiation from the nearby nebula masking our detailed scans. Objections immediately erupted from around the room. Myron looked particularly alarmed. My lady, the risk is unacceptable. If anything happened to you, the risk to the Alliance is greater if we allow these weapons to be deployed, Sarani countered firmly. And no one else has our combination of technical expertise and political authority to evaluate both aspects of this threat. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, Sarani's authority prevailed. The plan was set. The Elysian Dawn would make a navigational detour near the Verdant system, conducting passive scans while maintaining the appearance of a routine diplomatic journey. Justin spent the next day reconfiguring the ship's sensor arrays, enhancing their sensitivity while minimizing their energy signature. It felt good to immerse himself in engineering problems again, his fingers dancing across control panels as he fine-tuned complex systems. Like old times, Sarani asked, finding him deep in the engineering section, surrounded by holographic system diagrams. Justin smiled up at her. Simpler times, maybe, though I wouldn't trade what we have now. She sat beside him, watching as he completed a particularly complex calibration sequence. Nor would I, though sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't taken that wrong turn into my chamber. Probably would have fixed the translation matrix and gone back to Earth, he mused, never knowing what I was missing. Her hand found his, cool fingers intertwining with warm ones. And I would have endured another political mating ritual, bound to someone who saw only my title and bloodline. The thought made Justin's chest tighten. For all the dangers they faced, for all the cultural barriers they continued to navigate, he couldn't imagine a life without Sarani now. Looks like we both got lucky with my poor navigation skills, he said lightly, bringing her hand to his lips in a gesture that bridged their different cultural expressions of affection. The journey to the Verdant system took 3 days, during which the Elysian Dawn maintained all appearances of a standard diplomatic vessel. They entered the system on a trajectory that would take them past the outer planets, a reasonable route adjustment that wouldn't raise suspicions. As they approached the uninhabited moon, where the weapons testing was reportedly taking place, Justin activated his enhanced sensor array, carefully modulated to appear as nothing more than standard navigational scans. "We're getting readings," he confirmed, studying the incoming data. "Definitely weapons tests. The energy pattern matches the intelligence reports. But," he frowned, adjusting the parameters, "there's something else. Some kind of subspace distortion I can't identify." Sarani leaned over his shoulder, her expression concerned. "Could it be a new form of cloaking technology?" "Possibly, but on a scale I've never seen before. It's as if they're trying to hide not just a ship, but an entire—" Justin broke off as a new alert flashed across his screen. "We've been scanned. High intensity, directed beam." Commander Velra's voice came sharp over the comm system. "Defensive positions. All non-essential personnel to secure stations." "Too late for that," Justin said grimly, as new data poured in. "3 vessels decloaking off our port bow, Krell design, but with modifications consistent with Drenth technology." The view screen showed the ships materializing like predators emerging from mist. Their hulls were dark, angular, bristling with weapons that glowed with ominous energy. "They're charging weapons," Velra reported. "Evasive maneuvers initiated." The Elysian Dawn lurched as it veered away from the approaching vessels. Despite its primarily diplomatic purpose, the ship was equipped with significant defensive capabilities, shields, limited weapons, and impressive maneuverability for its size. "Open a channel," Sarani commanded, moving to the central communication station. Her royal regalia, worn for the planned diplomatic meetings at Callisto, seemed oddly appropriate for this moment of crisis. When the channel opened, the screen showed a Krell commander. Reptilian features, set in a cold expression. Scales, gleaming under harsh lighting. "Lady Sarani," the commander acknowledged with false courtesy. "How unfortunate that you've strayed into restricted space." "This is neutral territory under Galactic Alliance Charter," Sarani responded, her voice steady and authoritative. "Your presence here with weapons charged constitutes an act of aggression." "Legalities matter little at the edge of civilized space," the Krell replied. "Surrender your vessel, and we may allow your crew to live as valuable political hostages." While the exchange continued, Justin was frantically working at his station, analyzing the enemy vessel's shield frequencies and weapon signatures. "Their shields are oscillating on a non-standard pattern," he muttered to Velra. "But there's a pulse delay we might exploit." Velra nodded, understanding immediately. As the ship's security chief, she had worked closely with Justin enough to follow his technical insights. "Targeting solutions recalibrated. Ready on your mark." The diplomatic exchange was clearly reaching its end. The Krell commander's patience was visibly thinning. "You have 30 seconds to power down your shields, or we open fire." Sarani's expression remained impassive. "We will not surrender. The Elysian Dawn is a diplomatic vessel under the protection of both the Valari Confederation and the Earth Federation. An attack on us is an attack on both governments." The Krell commander bared sharpened teeth in what might have been a smile. "Then let this be the spark that ignites the conflict we have long desired." The connection terminated abruptly. "They're targeting our propulsion systems," Velra announced, reading the tactical display. "Firing sequence initiated." "Now!" Justin called, activating the modified shield harmonics he had programmed. The Elysian Dawn's shields shimmered, adjusting to the precise frequency that would maximize disruption to the Krell weapons. When the enemy fire hit, the shields held barely, and Justin's countermeasure sent a feedback pulse along the weapon's energy beam. On the view screen, they watched as the lead Krell vessel's weapons system overloaded, sending cascading failures across its power grid. The ship listed to one side, emergency systems visibly engaging. "Direct hit on their primary weapons array," Velra confirmed with grim satisfaction. "But the other 2 vessels are adjusting their frequencies." "Evasive pattern delta," Sarani ordered, "and signal the emergency beacon to Alliance Command." The space battle that followed tested the Elysian Dawn to its limits. Designed primarily for diplomatic missions, it lacked the firepower of a true warship. But what it lacked in weapons, it made up for in advanced shields and maneuverability. Advantages that Justin and Velra exploited to their fullest. Justin had never imagined himself in a combat situation like this. His engineering training had prepared him to solve problems, not fight battles. Yet here he was, calling out shield adjustments and power redistributions while enemy fire rocked the ship around him. A particularly heavy barrage sent him sprawling from his chair, a console exploding in a shower of sparks nearby. He felt strong hands helping him up, Sarani, who had moved to his side despite the danger. "Are you injured?" she asked, her golden eyes scanning him for wounds. "Just bruised," he assured her, already turning back to his damaged station. "We need to reroute the shield controls to the secondary array." They worked side by side, her royal training complementing his technical expertise as they fought to keep the ship intact. Around them, the crew of the Elysian Dawn, a mixture of humans and Valari who had served together for months, demonstrated the same seamless cooperation. The battle seemed to stretch for hours, though in reality it was less than 30 minutes. The arrival of Alliance patrol ships, responding to their emergency beacon, finally turned the tide. The remaining Krell vessels, realizing they were now outmatched, engaged their warp drives and fled. In the aftermath, as damage control teams worked to stabilize the ship's systems, Justin and Sarani found themselves in the medical bay. His shoulder was being treated for a burn from the exploding console, while she received attention for a cut above her eye, where a falling ceiling panel had struck her. "Not exactly the diplomatic mission we planned," Justin commented wryly, as the medical officer finished sealing his wound. "Diplomacy takes many forms," Sarani replied, reaching across to take his hand. "Sometimes it requires words, sometimes action." The attack had provided the evidence they needed. The Krell-Drenth Alliance was now exposed beyond any doubt. Their weapons development program revealed to the Galactic Alliance. Emergency sessions were called, sanctions implemented, and the threat neutralized before it could escalate into full-scale war. For Justin and Sarani, the incident reinforced what they already knew. Their strength lay in their partnership, in the unique combination of their different backgrounds and perspectives. Where others saw only obstacles between their worlds, they had found connection and complementary purpose. As the Elysian Dawn limped back to Alliance space for repairs, they stood together on the observation deck once more. The ship's crystal architecture had been damaged in the battle, creating new patterns as starlight filtered through the fractured surfaces. "It's beautiful, in its way," Sarani observed, looking at the unexpected light patterns. "Different from the original design, but perhaps more interesting for having weathered the storm." Justin smiled, understanding the metaphor. "Like us." "Like us," she agreed, her bioluminescence creating gentle patterns that he had learned to read as clearly as any words. Love, commitment, and pride flowed across her skin in waves of light. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, a gesture that had once seemed impossible across the cultural and physiological differences that separated them. Now, it felt as natural as breathing. "Where to next?" he asked, looking out at the vast expanse of stars. Sarani's expression held the perfect balance of royal determination and personal warmth that made her who she was. "Wherever we're needed. The galaxy is full of worlds where different peoples struggle to understand each other. And that's what we do best," Justin finished the thought. "Build bridges where others see only divides." As the ship continued its journey homeward, they remained there together, two beings from vastly different worlds who had found in each other something neither had expected. A partnership that transcended tradition, defied politics, and redefined what was possible when differences became strengths rather than barriers. Their story had begun with a cultural misunderstanding, an accidental intrusion mistaken for a mating invitation. But what had started in confusion had evolved into something far more meaningful. A bond formed through choice, strengthened by challenge, and sustained by mutual respect and growing love. In the vastness of space, amid the complex dance of interstellar politics and ancient traditions, they had created something new, a connection that honored the best of both their worlds while charting a course toward an unexplored future. Together,